Discover the incredible story of how I unexpectedly became fluent in French at age 25. Sarah Thompson never imagined her life would feel like an endless cycle of coffee spills and breakfast specials at the Willow Creek Diner. At 25, with a sick mother and a younger brother depending on her, ambition felt like a distant dream. Every clink of a coffee cup echoed her sense of entrapment. The hustle and bustle around her faded beneath the weight of family obligations. Then came the attic discovery, an old box of letters from her estranged grandfather, filled with tales of adventure and romance in France. Each word ignited a flicker of something she thought she'd lost, hope. Motivated by the ink-stained pages, she enrolled in a night class at the local community college. But as excitement coursed through her veins, it was met with skepticism. "What are you thinking?" Her friends would laugh, dismissing her dreams as whimsical fancy. An older colleague at the diner scoffed, "You think you can just waltz into a world like that?" Sarah would nod, her chest tightening with both anger and fear. Why couldn't she chase dreams of her own, just for once? With every late-night study session, Sarah's determination thickened like the steam rising from her morning coffee. French culture surrounded her, enveloping her in a way the diner never could. Yet, balancing her new venture with endless shifts felt heavy, a stark reminder of the sacrifice she had to make for family. She fought against lingering doubts. Her fears whispered that she was being selfish. Could she really chase something that felt so far removed from where her feet were planted? In the classroom, her French professor, a retired diplomat, recognized her yearning. He became a mentor, guiding her through the intricacies of language and culture. Each lesson cracked open a door she never knew existed. His encouragement was like a gentle push, urging her to understand the potential waiting inside her. Still, Sarah hesitated, a knot tightening in her stomach every time she embraced her growing abilities. Shouldn't she prioritize her family first? Weeks rolled into months as she prepared for a public speaking event, a chance to reflect on her journey. The impending moment loomed like a storm cloud, the opportunity for growth twined with the suffocating responsibility at home. She felt her heart race as thoughts of her mother and brother crept in. What if she failed? What if she left them behind with no support? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as she received news about an exchange program to Paris, Sarah stood paralyzed by the weight of her obligations. The dreams of traversing Paris were strong, but could she really leave? Her heart ached, torn between desire and loyalty. The visions of her grandfather's stories swirled in her mind, and in that air of indecision, a spark ignited within her. What if she could rewrite her narrative and honor his legacy? As hope clashed with fear, Sarah stood on a precipice of potential, her future uncertain, teetering between aspiration and obligation. The choice loomed: dream or duty? The answer hung in the air, just out of reach. The weight of obligation pulled at Sarah's core as her fingers hovered over the printed letter detailing the exchange program. Excitement and fear collided like thunder in a summer storm, each thought striking her like a bolt of lightning. Could she truly abandon her responsibilities, even for a chance to fulfill a dream? Pictures of her mother's frail frame flashed through her mind, and the looming face of her younger brother, whose eyes held trust and dependency. Yet, the thought of Paris, the cobbled streets, the vibrant cafes, the chance to immerse herself in a world she had only glimpsed through her grandfather's letters beckoned her with irresistible allure. This was not just about learning a language, it was about reclaiming the pieces of herself she had left behind. Each word she studied unlocked a part of her soul that had lain dormant amidst the hustle of the diner life. Determined to find clarity one evening, Sarah slipped away from the noise of the diner and the stresses of home. Under the cover of darkness, she retreated to her favorite spot by the creek, where the water gurgled gently, whispering secrets from the past. She pulled the crumpled letter from her pocket, her heart racing as she reread the line that had drawn her into this world: "Life is too short to remain an observer." That sentence lingered, echoing against the rippling water. What did it mean to truly live? In that moment, watching the moonlight shimmer on the surface, Sarah felt her determination swell. She wouldn't just go to Paris to learn the language, she would embrace her grandfather's spirit of adventure. But how could she reconcile this vision with her reality? Returning home, trends of the last few weeks spun in her mind. The cafe where she worked felt more stifling each day, the smell of burnt coffee and fryer oil mingling with her growing desires. Her shifts merged together, each customer's monotonous order echoing the weight of her stagnation. Her professor's voice resonated in her head. He often spoke of facing fears head-on. Transform those doubts into determination, he said, encouraging students to seize opportunities. As she peeled potatoes in the back kitchen the next day, her hands moved almost reflexively while her mind wandered toward the steps she needed to take. She remembered the advice of an older customer who had once insisted, "You need to tell your story, Sarah. If you don't, it fades." Sacrificing her voice felt more daunting than leaving her family behind. It felt like a betrayal of all they endured together. Yet the very essence of her grandfather's words hung overhead, striking a deep chord. If she was going to honor his legacy, embracing her voice and pursuing her passion was essential. Could she find a way to stay connected to her family while also taking a daring leap toward her true self? With every passing moment, the idea burgeoned like a seed waiting for sunlight. As she left the diner that evening, a new resolve glimmered within her, a desire to cultivate both her family's needs and her own. Social media buzz around public speaking events played in her mind. Maybe she could share her story, intertwining her journey with her family's hardships, using her newfound voice for something larger than herself. With the stakes raised and newfound clarity, Sarah felt a shift within. The decision hadn't been made yet, but the path was becoming clear. What would she give up? What would she fight for? The time had come to face those questions head-on, returning to the classroom armed with confidence. But just as she was ready to don her newfound resolve, she received a message from her professor about an upcoming opportunity for intensive French training in Paris. Would she be ready to act, or would reality draw her back once again? Sarah sat in her cramped bedroom, the soft glow of her desk lamp illuminating the crumpled letter. Her professor's email weighing heavily on her mind, she grappled with the gravity of the decision ahead. The allure of Paris danced like a flickering flame, yet shadows of responsibility loomed large. Each time she thought about how to inform her family, doubt crept in, taunting her with visions of their disappointment. That night, she lay awake, her heart racing with a mixture of urgency and fear. Who am I to pursue such a dream? Echoed in her thoughts. The gnawing fear of neglecting her family was suffocating. However, beneath the doubt festered a relentless desire for growth and exploration that she could no longer suppress. In the morning, she resolved to take a methodical approach. A whiteboard on the wall served as her blueprint. She jotted down everything that needed consideration: the financial impact, potential childcare for her younger brother, and ultimately, methods to aid her family while she ventured away. It felt absurd, yet liberating to visualize her ambitions beyond the diner. At the cafe later that afternoon, Sarah carefully balanced the orders while replaying her professor's voice in her head. "Face your fears," he had said. She noted how the hustle of the diner was suffocating her spirit, and yet, wasn't she also building the very skills needed to communicate clearly? Each interaction with customers helped shape her, sharpening her storytelling abilities every day, just like her grandfather had done through his letters. Every customer she served became a chapter in her own unfolding narrative, a practice ground for her voice. Perhaps she could write a blog chronicling her experiences, her doubts, her lessons in French, her struggle to balance aspirations with responsibility. The thought invigorated her. Still, as she scrubbed tables, a familiar face entered, the older customer who had once urged her to share her story. With a hopeful smile, she approached the table, gathering courage. "I've been thinking about writing," she ventured, "about my journey to pursue my dreams." The older woman's eyes sparkled with interest. "That's wonderful, dear. You have a story worth telling. Don't let anything silence you." The affirmation struck a chord in Sarah, igniting a flicker of confidence. Perhaps she could indeed navigate both worlds, the demands of family and her personal ambitions. With her emotions swirling, she returned home and sat down to write. The words flowed effortlessly, weaving tales of bravery, discomfort, and hope. She felt empowered, reclaiming her narrative as if it were a shield against the growing pressure to conform. Would her family see her attempts as selfish, or would they recognize her effort to cultivate a life beyond their circumstances? As she reached the end of her piece, she hesitated, staring at the blinking cursor. Should she share it? The implications loomed large, a decision teetering like a tightrope walker. Just then, her phone buzzed. Another message from her professor: the program deadline is approaching quickly. We need finalists soon. The weight of the moment pressed down on her. She stood at a crossroads, brimming with potential yet bound by fear. Would she choose to leap into the unknown, or retreat back into the familiar shadows of obligation? The thrill of possibility electrified her limbs, and unwavering excitement mixed with lingering anxiety. In that pivotal moment, determination surged. Sarah glanced at her writing, then at the letter outlining opportunities for French training. Her decision teetered on the precipice of a dream tangible and faint. What skills would she uncover within herself in the coming days? As she prepared to take the next step into a world filled with uncertainty, a new question pierced her mind. What sacrifice would truly honor her family's legacy while enabling her to embrace the vibrant life waiting in Paris? Sarah awoke the next morning feeling a curious mix of anxiety and resolve. The shadows of uncertainty had shifted, replaced by a flicker of purpose. She made a commitment to take her first step towards her dream, even if it felt small. The weight of her family's expectations still loomed large, but she refused to let that define her next move. Determined to conquer the fear that had paralyzed her, she logged onto her computer and opened a blank document. Her heart raced as she typed out the first few sentences of her blog, a space where she could voice her insecurities and ambitions. I never imagined that pursuing a dream would feel like stepping into the unknown, she wrote. Putting her thoughts into words felt liberating, but also daunting. Each keystroke echoed a promise to herself first. Her professor's words lingered, urging her not to shy away from discomfort. After submitting the draft for her blog, she transitioned to a language learning app. Engaging with French felt like drawing a curtain back on a vibrant world that had always been just out of reach. The vivid sound of the language intrigued her, but she wrestled with frustration as she stumbled through pronunciation exercises. She questioned her ability. Could she truly master this language in the time she had before leaving? Yet something in her resisted surrender. She recalled the way her grandfather had immersed himself in stories, never fearing the mistakes he'd make along the way. Emulating that spirit, she decided to integrate French into her daily life menus, movies, and even conversations with the regulars at the diner. Her sense of inadequacy fueled her ambition. She was no longer content with simply serving tables and dreaming. Later that evening, as she walked home beneath a fiery sunset, doubts crept back in. The image of her family's faces fell into her mind, and she hesitated. Would she be seen as someone chasing self-indulgent fantasies? Or could they grasp her need for personal growth? In an attempt to quiet her fear, she took a deep breath and resolved to have the conversation with her family soon. The following day, while juggling her tasks at the diner, Sarah noticed her younger brother watching her. He absorbed the energy radiating from her newfound determination. She could see him mirroring her interest as she spoke a few French phrases to customers. This seemed to bridge a gap. It was as if they shared a language of dreams now. She realized, despite her fears, that her aspirations could inspire him. As she returned home, a plan began to formulate. To ease her family into the idea of her departure, she would dedicate her next blog entry to exploring the importance of pursuing one's passion. She wanted them to understand that her journey was not just a personal venture but a legacy, an act of honoring their sacrifices while establishing her identity. That evening, she poured herself into writing, meticulously arranging her thoughts. The words transformed into a compelling narrative that echoed her trials and triumphs. By the end of the draft, she felt a sense of clarity. This could be a platform to invite her family on her journey, to help them understand her motivations. As she prepared to share this enlightening piece with her family, anticipation and fear swirled within her. She took another look at the letter from her professor and confirmed the deadline in her mind. In that charged moment, she knew that confessing her aspirations would be a profound act of courage. Would they pride themselves in her determination, or would they resist the change? The tension threaded through her, an unsettling yet exhilarating whisper of what lay ahead. As she hit send on her blog post, her heart pounded not just from anxiety, but from the realization that she was no longer a passive participant in her life. With each decision, she was redefining herself. The next day, she would confront her family, but what would their response be? Would she gain their support or face bitter resistance? The road ahead shimmered with uncertainty, yet it bristled with potential. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a blend of hope and trepidation, feeling the weight of her resolve settle firmly on her shoulders. Today wasn't just another day, it was the moment she had been preparing for the conversation with her family. She had carefully curated her notes, cultivating an approach that balanced vulnerability and determination. It felt surreal to acknowledge that she was actually prepared to share her journey with the people who had shaped her life. As she made her way to the diner, the sun glimmered through the trees, creating a vibrant backdrop that contrasted sharply with the swirling anxiety in her gut. Each step felt monumental. Would they understand her desire for growth, or would they react defensively? She felt the familiar flutter of doubt. Would her family interpret her aspirations as foolish defiance against their expectations? While attending to her tasks that morning, Sarah's mind was active and chaotic. She tried to engage with customers, yet her thoughts slipped back to her brother's eyes, filled with curiosity at her recent transformations. It filled her with a strange mixture of pride and fear. She hoped that he, too, would eventually grasp the transformative power of pursuing one's passions. This was not simply about herself, it was about setting a precedent for him, a younger sibling watching an older sister carve out a path that diverged from the familiar. Once her shift ended, she partially refocused her thoughts on the research she had been doing about language acquisition. She had discovered that immersing oneself in a language, surrounding herself with it in daily interactions and experiences, was crucial for fluency. It offered a refreshing parallel to what she was preparing to do with her family later today. Immersion requires courage, she reminded herself, echoing her professor's essence. She realized she was not only stepping into a new language but into a new version of herself. Clenching her fists for a moment, she stifled the wave of vulnerability washing over her. No longer would she retreat into silence when facing uncomfortable conversations. Instead, she would embrace the challenge head-on. Back at home, the atmosphere was filled with the comforting aroma of her mother's cooking. As her family gathered around the kitchen table, the air grew heavy with unspoken words. Sarah's heart raced as she prepared to present her thoughts. Before she could second-guess herself, she inhaled deeply and shared her blog post with them, her voice trembling yet resolute. She elaborated on the significance of pursuing passions and personal growth, letting her true feelings pour out. She found her rhythm, each word unlocking bits of her fears and aspirations, yet, as she recounted her journey, she could see the expressions shift. Her father's brow furrowed with concern, her mother's eyes glistening with unspent tears, and her brother watching with an intensity that both calmed and unsettled her. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by her own heart thumping defiantly against her ribcage. Then, her father broke the tension with a question that cut deep. But what if this pursuit doesn't pan out? What if you end up regretting it? He leaned forward, the weight of his protective instincts evident in his tone. In that moment, Sarah confronted not only her father's fears but the very emotions she had wrestled with for so long. Could she articulate what success meant to her? Would her family finally understand the depths of her determination? This was not merely about following a whimsical dream, it was about redefining who she could become. As her thoughts raced, Sarah sensed the stakes had heightened. The conversation was a precipice, and she was teetering on the edge, ready to dive into the unknown. What if she began, her voice steady despite the turbulence within? What if this is simply the beginning of something incredible? The air thickened, holding the weight of possibility. Would they engage with her vision, or would her aspirations face dismissal? Sarah braced for their reactions, feeling the transformative potential of this moment pulse around her. The conversation had just begun, but where it would lead remained uncertain. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she awaited her family's response. The silence stretched, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. She searched her father's eyes, willing him to find hope among his concerns. Her brother shifted in his seat, clearly caught between wanting to support her and feeling the compelling gravity of their father's apprehension. Finally, her mother broke the quiet. "Sweetheart, we just want to make sure you're safe. Taking risks can lead to disappointment, she said, her voice soft but steady. The plea for caution resonated with the love that lay beneath it. I understand, Mom, Sarah replied, her own voice gaining strength. But isn't life also about taking risks? What about the dreams that could ignite my passion and purpose? What if I never try? With each question, she felt the weight lifting off her shoulders, replaced by a determination that had been simmering beneath the surface. This conversation wasn't merely a discussion about her choices but an opportunity to redefine her potential, both for herself and her family. I'm not just leaving behind one path. I'm pursuing something that makes me feel alive, she continued, emboldened by the thought. Her father leaned back, his expression softening slightly. You say that now, but it's easy to get swept away in passion. What's your plan if it doesn't work? What will you do then? Sarah felt the familiar twinge of doubt creep back in, but she pushed it aside. If I don't devote time to this, I know I'll wonder what if for the rest of my life. I want to become fluent in French because language opens up new worlds. It allows me to connect, to travel, to share experiences with others. There's so much I want to do. At that moment, her brother surprised her by speaking up. But what if you find a part of yourself you didn't know existed? Like trying out for the school play? Remember? He looked at her earnestly, recalling the spark that ignited that first leap of faith. She smiled at him, grateful for his support. Exactly. It leads to discovery, she said, the words flowing freely now. I want to immerse myself entirely in this goal. I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm ready to find out who I can become along the way. A flicker of pride sparked in her father's eyes. It's just that we love you and want what's best for you. Making sure your dreams are achievable is part of that. A moment of silence passed as this new understanding settled over them. The tension seemed to dissolve, transforming into a complicated mixture of acceptance and cautious optimism. Sarah wanted to believe they could stand by her, even if they didn't fully comprehend her ambitions yet. Her determination reshaped itself, evolving with the revelations of their fears. She realized that the journey ahead would not just depend on her resolve, it would require open lines of communication and mutual support. As the conversation lingered, she thought about her next steps. She would need to not only devote time daily to her studies but also find a way to keep them engaged in her progress. They would need to see her growth and feel her passion if she hoped for them to support her fully. Feeling emboldened, she offered, "What if I could show you my progress? I can share updates, invite you to practice lessons, or even discuss the culture I'm diving into. Would that help?" Her family's faces lit up with interest. It was an opening, a tangible way to bridge the chasm of misunderstanding. "Let us be part of your journey," her mother agreed, a glimmer of excitement in her voice. As they moved to lighter topics, the warmth of connection filled the kitchen. But in the back of Sarah's mind, a new set of challenges brewed. Would she be able to sustain the momentum she had created? The evening drew to a close, and Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline surge through her. This was just the beginning, yet her resolve had never felt stronger. The fleeting doubt that had lingered began to take a back seat to anticipation. What if she could communicate fluently before her next family gathering? The thought tingled in her mind, instilling both fear and excitement. Could she truly achieve it? Storm clouds of doubt swirled at the edges of her determination. The time had come to confront not only her language barriers but the inner voices that whispered she would fail. The journey ahead would not just build her fluency, it would forge her identity. As she lay in bed that night, she considered how to execute her passion not just as a dream but as a living goal to manifest. Would she have what it takes to claim this new version of herself? With her heart racing, Sarah thought about the upcoming weeks and the methods she could employ. The prospects of structures, plans, and challenges flickered in her mind like the flame of a candle ready to ignite. As sleep eluded her, a question loomed larger. How far was she willing to go to ensure this dream crystallized into reality? The stakes had never felt higher, and the pressure pushed her to confront the unknown. What awaited her in this uncharted territory of personal exploration? The moment of truth would arrive soon enough. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah felt the thrill of embarking on her journey to fluency and self-discovery. Each morning, her determination coursed through her as she pored over vocabulary lists and grammar rules, treating her French studies like an intimate dialogue. She transformed her workspace into a language sanctuary, plastering posters with French phrases on the walls and placing sticky notes around the house, each one an invitation to practice. This was no longer just about achieving a goal, it was about embracing the very essence of who she wanted to be. However, even as proactive as she had become, the pressure of expectation and ambition often weighed heavy on her. The dialogue with her family lingered in her mind. Were they right to question the viability of her dreams? She felt a flicker of doubt amid the excitement. What if she poured herself into this endeavor only to come up short? Yet whenever these thoughts crept in, she turned back to her motivation. She visualized herself conversing effortlessly in French at a cafe, laughing and sharing stories. It drove her to focus, igniting her studies with fervor. Sarah signed up for conversation groups online, finding strangers across the globe eager to practice with her. Each session became an acrobatic dance of words, her heart racing as she engaged with her partners. During one particularly memorable exchange, a French speaker named Julien offered insights that went beyond language structure. Their discussion on art and culture exposed parts of herself she had yet to explore. Was this what her journey would unlock? For the first time, it felt clear that fluency wasn't merely a skill, it represented an avenue toward a broader human experience. Bolstered by this revelation, Sarah's personal strategies began to evolve. She initiated a routine not only for her studies but for self-reflection. Before bed, she began journaling, a way to process her feelings and realizations. Each entry solidified her commitment to remain open to the process and, more importantly, to herself. She wrote about failures, triumphs, and the tension inherent in chasing dreams. This ritual became central to her identity, a channel for internal dialogue that helped steer her through waves of self-doubt. But as she shared her progress with family, she noticed an unsettling change. Their enthusiasm began to dim. While her mother still expressed interest, her father's questions grew sharper. One evening, he questioned her choice to attend conversation groups. Are you sure it's safe to converse with strangers online? What if they don't have your best interest at heart? The conversation sent shockwaves through her newfound self-assurance. Was her father's incredulity a reflection of his chronic worry or a valid concern she should heed? For the first time, she struggled to reconcile their support with her burning desire to push boundaries. Each question felt like a chink in her armor, threatening to expose her fragile confidence. That night, faced with her journal, Sarah dissected the tension. Her father's fears were grounded in love, but was she also betraying her independence by allowing them to influence her journey? The conflict felt like a double-edged sword. She wanted to honor her family's fears while boldly assuming agency over her life. As she contemplated her next steps, the stakes were impossibly high. Her nervousness about venturing into wider social circles loomed, yet part of the journey demanded that she take risks, perhaps even challenge her father's notion of safety. Would she continue to forge ahead, or would the weight of familial expectations pull her back? Driven by uncertainty and longing, she resolved to confront this troubling paradox head-on. The following day, she decided to initiate a heartfelt conversation with her family about her expanding horizons and invite them to understand her autonomy. How would they react? Would her ambition bridge the gap between support and skepticism, or push them further away? The sun poured into Sarah's room the next morning, washing the space in a golden light that felt almost premonitory. There was a heaviness in the air, a somber weight amplifying her morning routine. Her mind raced, analyzing every potential outcome of the conversation she had resolved to initiate. As she sipped her coffee, she tried to discern the words she'd need to articulate her journey, her desire for independence, and her need for familial understanding. She scribbled potential phrases and scenarios in the margins of her notebook, grappling with the right approach to bridge her ambitions with their worries. Later that evening, as her family gathered around the dinner table, tension thickened like a dense fog. Each forkful of food clattered against the plates, the comfortable chatter that usually filled the room feeling more like an echo of unresolved questions. Sarah took a deep breath, allowing the air to recharge her resolve. She prayed for steadiness as she scanned their faces, her mother, optimistic and encouraging, while her father appeared guarded and troubled, his brows slightly furrowed. "Can we talk about something?" she finally declared, her voice steadier than she felt. The silence that followed was a vacuum, swallowing the laughter that lingered unspoken. Her father raised an eyebrow, his demeanor shifting instantly to one of concern. "What's on your mind?" In that moment, clarity struck. Sarah outlined her recent endeavors, the online conversation groups, the learning, and her passion for immersing herself in French culture. Each word was delivered with intention, not as mere explanation but as an invitation into her world. She recalled her initial fears giving way to excitement, how language had sparked an undeniable thrill within her. But within her narrative, she laid bare her vulnerabilities, the doubts that plagued her and the wrestle with feeling torn between her aspirations and her father's protective instincts. As she spoke, she watched for reactions. Her mother's soft nods urged her forward, while her father's brow remained knitted. She wished to convey that her journey wasn't a rejection of their values, but rather an exploration of self, a necessary leap into the unknown where true growth thrived. "I know you worry about me," she said, locking gaze with her father. "But this is something I need to pursue for my own growth. Not just to learn a language, but to learn more about myself. Can you understand that?" His eyes narrowed slightly, and she wondered if he was considering her words or simply conjuring more concerns. Silence draped over them again, heavy and charged with the gravity of the moment. The tension was palpable, each second stretching out as time pooled between them like a still lake reflecting uncertainty. Finally, her father sighed. "I want you to pursue your dreams, but promise me you'll remain cautious. Not everything on the internet is as safe as it seems." In that line, a fracture and perhaps a pivot was revealed. Sarah couldn't deny the love woven into his worry, yet part of her longed for more than the confines of caution. She sensed that her father's limited worldview was shaped by years of apprehension. It was a view she didn't want to replicate. So she took the chance, pushing past discomfort. "Dad, I promise to be cautious, but I also need to step outside of my comfort zone. By exploring these connections, I hope to grow into who I'm meant to be." His gaze shifted, a mixture of resignation and admiration creeping in. Perhaps he was beginning to see beyond his initial doubts. Yet, as she laid her heart bare, she felt a sliver of liberation and fear intermingle, a reminder that vulnerability required as much courage as the action itself. When the conversation finally started to soften, Sarah realized they hadn't reached a conclusion, rather, they had opened a dialogue. The space between their views was raw, still needing to be reconciled, and yet she felt a cautious empowerment begin to blossom. But as she reflected within herself, the lingering question remained, would her father's fears eventually compel her to navigate within his boundaries, or would this discussion prove to be the first step toward drawing necessary lines of her own? The night wrapped around them, and Sarah's heart raced with both uncertainty and intrigue. Tomorrow promised more conversations, more exploration, but the question remained, how deeply was she willing to challenge the parameters set by love and fear? With the thrill of possibility just around the corner, she knew it was time to test not only her courage but the resilience of her ambitions. In pursuit of her dream, the greatest challenge might not be the language barrier, but the emotional distance she needed to cross. Would she truly be able to embrace her autonomy as she had hoped? The morning after her heartfelt conversation with her father, Sarah awoke with an unusual buoyancy. The air felt lighter, tinged with possibility. For the first time in weeks, she was filled with a determination sharpened by her recent dialogue. She realized that her father's concerns, though deeply etched in love, could fuel her drive instead of bind it. It was a perspective shift that ignited a new fire within her. Stepping into her routine, she resolved to approach her study of French with renewed intensity. She created a detailed schedule, slotting in time for online lessons, conversation practice, and cultural immersion. This structure offered her a sense of control, a choice to actively engage in her aspirations rather than passively allowing apprehensions to rule her path. Sarah dove into the intricacies of French grammar, each rule a barrier to her fluency that she learned to navigate with increasing dexterity. She found herself surprisingly invigorated, motivated not just by the love of the language but by the fleeting moments of self-discovery it provided. Each victory in pronunciation or vocabulary felt like a step away from her past self, who had often looked to others for reassurance. The act of speaking, even if faltering, was a declaration of her agency, yet the thrill of studying began to stir another emotion, an unfamiliar intensity brewing below the surface, urging her to push harder. She joined online conversation groups not just in the safe realm of structured lessons but to engage in spontaneous discussions with native speakers. Each time she pressed join, her stomach fluttered with both excitement and dread. Would they understand her? Would she make sense? But the fear was eclipsed by the craving to connect and express herself. One Thursday evening, during a lively discussion about French films, Sarah encountered Jean, a fluent speaker whose warmth unexpectedly put her at ease. His direct approach to conversation, combined with gentle corrections, carved a space for her to grow. They transitioned from simple exchanges about film preferences to deeper dialogues about cultural differences, and Sarah felt a profound sense of belonging in a virtual world that once seemed daunting. In engaging with Jean, she discovered not just a linguistic mentor, he became a mirror reflecting her own evolving self-identity. As their sessions continued, feelings began to surface that both excited and unnerved her. Jean was not only insightful but engagingly witty. Her initial admiration for his command of the language morphed into a keen fascination that lingered long after their discussions ended. This new dynamic struck an alarming chord within her, a budding curiosity that challenged her comfort zone. With each virtual encounter, Sarah faced a familiar question: was she willing to risk further emotional investment? Could she open herself up to someone new, testing the boundaries she had established for self-protection? She had successfully delineated her aspirations from familial fears, but diving into these more personal waters felt like a leap into the unscripted depths of human connection. That weekend, her family planned a small gathering, and Sarah sensed an opportunity to reconnect amidst her evolving journey. As she mingled with relatives, her mind wandered to her conversations with Jean, and she found herself longing for the boldness she felt during those late-night discussions. Later, her mother asked, "So, what's new in the world of French?" The question jolted her back to the present, but Sarah's response sparked with newfound confidence. She described her online interactions, speaking passionately about the nuances they explored as if that meant sharing a piece of herself. Her father's guarded expression resurfaced, but unlike before, it didn't deter her. It steadied her resolve. She understood that not everyone would immediately grasp her transformation, but it was hers to own. As the evening wound down, Sarah reflected on how far she had come, not just in language fluency but in articulating her growth. This mingling of family and future had unearthed a deeper layer of ambition within her. However, the remaining question loomed large: would she be able to articulate her shifting emotions around Jean, or would that emerging vulnerability set her back once again? Her heart raced with anticipation for the next encounter, both thrilling and frightening. The moment was approaching when she would have to clarify her feelings, risking both the connection she had built and the independence she fought so hard to achieve. Would she have the courage to be direct, or would she let the fear of vulnerability anchor her once again? Sarah stared across the cafe table at Jean, her pulse quickening with a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. This particular meeting had marked an evolution for her, not only in language but in understanding the essence of connection. Over the past few months, she had learned to weave her burgeoning fluency into raw, authentic conversations, but now it felt different. This was not merely a class exercise, it was a dance of two souls navigating uncharted waters. Today, she intended to articulate the culmination of her journey, not just the language, but her aspirations, her dreams, and the electrifying experiences at the borders of self-discovery. She wanted to express the excitement of risking vulnerability with someone who had quickly become a significant part of her life. In that moment, the weight of her family's expectations faded into the background, and clarity set in. Was she ready to share her feelings for Jean, perhaps risking her hard-earned emotional independence? As they exchanged pleasantries in French, each exchanged phrase signified more than language competency. It held the implications of connection. Jean noticed her hesitance and leaned in, his eyes inviting her to share without fear. Perhaps he sensed the transformation she had undergone. The shy diner waitress had become a confident conversationalist, filled with dreams and hopes beyond her previous reality. "Ça he asked, his voice warm and encouraging. "Je vais bien," she replied, her confidence similarly warming. "Actually, I have something I want to share with you." Her heart raced as she felt the gravity of the words she was about to utter. "I feel like this journey has revealed so much to me, not just about French but about myself. I want to explore us." The air buzzed with unresolved tension as Jean remained silent for a moment, letting her words settle between them. She held her breath, fearing a misstep. Would he interpret her honesty as heavy-handed? Would he recoil from her burgeoning desires? Finally, he responded with a thoughtful smile. I've felt it too, Sarah. You inspire me with your courage. Your determination to learn, to grow, it's captivating. Relief washed over her, but Sarah knew there was more to articulate. It was not merely the affirmation from Jean that confirmed her desires, it was about the authenticity of her journey. Each day, I push through uncertainties, but I know that this is more than just a language. This is about embracing who I am meant to be. And I want to invite you into that journey. Jean's expression softened further, pulling her more profoundly into the conversation. You're not just chasing fluency, Sarah. You're embracing life, and that's something truly beautiful. Their dialogue unfolded with a sense of newfound recognition both for themselves and their potential partnership. As they explored the nuances of their evolving feelings, Sarah felt capable of conquering what she had previously seen as insurmountable challenges. By articulating her emotions, she conquered a significant barrier that had long restrained her happiness, realizing that vulnerability could lead to deeper connections rather than detracting from her independence. In the coming weeks, Sarah continued to navigate between fostering her relationship with Jean and nurturing the ties of familial expectations. Her family noticed her radiant transformations, the undeniable growth reflecting from her smile. Conversations with her parents became more open and receptive, allowing them glimpses into her aspirations. They observed confidently swirling tales of her new friendships and her experiences of immersing herself in the language. One evening, as Sarah demonstrated her acquired fluency by ordering a French dessert while reveling in her enthusiasm, her father leaned back and recognized the extraordinary journey she had undertaken. The skepticism that once clouded his support began to lift as he saw his daughter confidently forging her path. Who would have thought? He remarked, a mix of pride and acceptance coloring his tone. Our Sarah, a French-speaking globetrotter. You've really conquered this. With a radiant smile, Sarah nodded. It's not just about French. It's about living, Dad. It's about making choices that aren't merely driven by obligation. I'm excited for this chapter and the ones yet to come. In that moment, she realized how far she had come from the blurred lines of family obligation to defining her compass by her own ambition. She had danced between doubt and hope, ultimately embracing a version of herself that showcased resilience and tenacity. Months later, standing at the iconic steps of the Sacré-Cœur, enveloped in the vibrant pulse of Paris, Sarah glanced back at her past, to the diner, to her family, to the timid whisper of her dreams. She had managed to intertwine her family's love for her and her own aspirations, creating a balance that resonated deeply with what she had always longed for. As she observed the breathtaking cityscape skylining her journey, she felt a surge of pride ripple through her body. She had chased her dreams and succeeded. And perhaps most importantly, she didn't have to abandon her roots to find wings. In doing so, she not only achieved fluency in French but conquered the barriers that had once held her back. Now, with a newfound voice, Sarah was ready to share her story with the world. Her blog, intertwined with both her family's history and her adventures, transformed into a motivational platform illuminating the power of pursuing one's passion. The final chapter awaited her eager fingers, reflecting triumph that connected deeply with her very essence. Her voice was no longer silenced, it resonated with strength born from adversity. Subscribe immediately to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories. You need to subscribe now to keep up with these inspiring journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every like makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this extraordinary ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support truly matters to those dedicated to personal overcoming stories.